Hello, everyone. My name is Bhushan Deshpande. My current role is I'm the CIO for ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, the joint venture that we have here in India, an integrated steel mill. And from a background standpoint, 20 plus years of system integration and consulting experience in India and other geographies. Sunit?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Bhushan, and good afternoon to all of you. So myself, Sunit Mukherji. I head the supply chain for lubricant business of Shell India here. And I have been into the industry for the last 23 years plus, working with, starting my career with Hindustan Motors. Then for the last 20 years, I have been with FMCG with all the brands that you can think of in terms of Britannia, Coke, Nestle, and the last 10 years of the Mondelez. And for the last 2 years, I am with Shell and throughout supply chain. So very happy to be here today to share some of the views in terms of digital supply chain. Thank you for having me here. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Sunit. So yes, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be with my fellow colleagues and senior industry leaders. In the next 15 minutes or so, Sunita and I will try and share with you our experiences of supply chain implementations, the typical challenges, and of course, touch upon some of the aspects of it. So before we get into it, what we would like to understand from you, Sunit, is you are an industry veteran in this area. What has been your observation, perception about how supply chain as a function has evolved over the past 3-4 years or so?
Yeah.
Let's start with that, and then we can get into the next level of discussions.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Bhushan here. So if I just look into, rewind myself some 5 to 7 years back, you all will be cognizant of the fact, like you have heard a word called VUCA, and it's a very common word nowadays. But I heard this VUCA term for the first time in 2008, right? So volatile, uncertain, ambiguous world. And just see around you for the last 5-7 years how these things has really evolved. We don't even know what are the things which is going to happen in the next day, right? So there is a kind of change which has happened. And if I have to just talk about why to go to 2008 and 9, just let's talk about 2016 onwards, that is 8th of November, when for the first time we heard like something called demonetization happening, right? And just imagine in your own roles, when you have heard this word, how exactly you reacted and how the entire enterprise reacted. So I'll say from the supply chain lens, the first kind of a volatility or first kind of a disruption for me was demonetization, wherein for the first 2 or 3 months, we're totally at dark to really know how the consumers are going to behave, how the purchasing behaviors will be there, how the consumer taste is going to evolve, and how you're going to really navigate through this scenario. So it was totally an ambiguous situation for all of us, and for that matter for everyone, right? And then you had this GST implementation just after 8 months in 2017, July 1st. So with all this volatility and ambiguity, I think this has become a kind of a norm. And when you talk about COVID, so I think in enough forums, you must have heard about like how people have navigated through this COVID. But the good thing is that during this time, the speed of the digital revolution which has happened across the world is just like, unfathomable. So it has happened in a breakneck speed. And whatever you have thought through, whatever you have designed in your mind, which would have taken some time and others, people have really speeded up the things and really navigated through that. So I think supply chain has evolved in a frenetic speed in the last 5 years. Today, if you see that when you, in any newspaper, or maybe even the President of the United States is also talking about supply chain. Right? So you can hear this word supply chain at the highest level that you can think of. Can you just imagine 10 years back, 15 years back, was it there? It was not there at all. So now in terms of the kind of impetus which has been put across the ecosystem and supply chain, And with supply security in the last 2 years of, 2020 onwards in terms of COVID, I think supply chain has got a lot of prominence all across. And the best part out here, which I'll see, is that the change, the manufacturing strategy, the manufacturing revolution, the logistics revolution, the planning revolution. So everywhere I can see a kind of a radical and 180-degree change. It's not an incremental change anymore. So I can spend, minutes and hours on this topic.
Sure.
But yes, there has been a tectonic and seismic shift in supply chain across all the verticals. And supply chain is contributing significantly to the business today with the help of digital revolution.
No, interesting. But Sunit, as you said, in the interest of time, do you want to talk about an experience where, an example maybe, where you had actually used or leveraged the technology in order to mitigate the risk related to supply chain?
Yeah.
Any small example?
So in terms of the digital strategy, firstly, I would love to talk about two salient points. One is that digital strategy we have started implementing much before COVID as well in terms of designing the strategy across the business. It's not about a siloed supply chain strategy wherein we put some automation and we talk about digital. It's across the enterprise it runs through. One key example which I'll tell here in manufacturing and one key example in logistics, which is really going to help us, that how in adversity you have leveraged this and turned it into an opportunity by using digital. So, and this will be like, you must be knowing also in your own industry, you must have done the same thing, but I want to, corroborate this with some examples which has really given a joy and benefit to the business as well. So when COVID started, 20th of March 2000, right? And after 10 days, when people really realized, okay, fine, this is something which is going to have a big impact, right? So then with the skeleton manpower in the factories, you have to operate the entire operations, right? And imagine a scenario wherein, maintenance work or some kind of a problem in the machineries happens and you don't have the skilled manpower there because of the various regulations or various reasons that why that particular gentleman is not in the factory, right? So we have used augmented reality into this,
Sure.
wherein a big project was happening, and basis that big project, that project also we could not delay because this is very of paramount importance. So I remember, after COVID, some 2-3 months post-COVID, of the inception of COVID, we had engineers sitting outside India, and through augmented reality, could see into each and every element of this entire setup of the machines. And that was the beauty of augmented reality, wherein you felt, okay, fine, the people who are supposed to do are not there physically, but still it can happen. So initially it was like a mammoth, colossal problem, but when we sat together, used augmented reality, we could see that how exactly we have managed the show and we navigated through. There is one other example, a very real example wherein you can feel, how digital and how technology has really helped us to navigate through these tough times. That is one in the manufacturing. The second in logistics. So logistics as well, because those were the times wherein you did not even know where is your shipment. So you did not have, you had age-old data loggers, right? Whether those data loggers were pretty archaic. But with the kind of technology that we have put in place of track and trace, dynamically. So in terms of, we already had this logistics control tower. Through this logistics control tower, each and every vehicle that plies on the road, you had this IoT devices, and through which you can sense where they are, where are the drivers, and what are the things happening in the vehicle in the course of the motion and all. So through that big screen, you can get to know where is my vehicle, at what time it's going to reach, because the anxiety level was at the highest level. Right? So I think with the right use of technology, we could monitor the vehicles, track and trace the vehicles. And at that particular juncture, when you talk to your customers and give them this kind of a thing, it becomes a kind of a gift from the heaven, actually, if you ask me.
True.
Yeah? And then the international shipments, right? Because of force majeure and the things which is to be there was supply security risk and all. So in those moments, where are the vehicles, the track and trace really helped us a lot to understand and give kind of a good satisfaction to the customers. I think these are the two examples which really gives a credit about how digital technology has really helped the enterprises to move ahead and navigate successfully in the crisis.
No, very good. Interesting. And considering the area or the industry vertical that you belong to, I'm sure.
So, Mr. Bhushan, so I have some questions for you as well. So one of the things is that as we are talking about the digital, revolution, digital transformation in the industry, so what are the key challenges basically that you face while you, laid on the foundation of digital transformation in an enterprise?
Right. So I would say that the challenges are different and yet common to everyone. So I would categorize it under three broad buckets to start with. One, of course, is the technology aspect. The second, which is important, is the functional integration. And not the technical, but the functional processes part of it. And the third, which is important, is the benefit realization. In my view, these are the three top three challenges or the areas that need to be looked after. And why I say technology, not a challenge, but our organization, the enterprises have evolved over a period of years. It's always a combination of heterogeneous systems, some homegrown software plus some packaged solutions, some decision support systems built on top of it. And when you look at choosing, or when you decide that, yes, I want to graduate to a next level of application, how do you choose the right solution or a product, taking into account the landscape that you have, manage the integration between the various systems, and of course the TCO part of it. That's always one of the key challenges.
Okay, and then, so once you have this challenge, and then how do you address actually these challenges?
There is no recipe as such as to you do this and your problems are solved, but I will share my experience. What we have been doing or we have tried in the past is to make sure that we involve every partner, every stakeholder who's part of that, who's in some way affected because of that. So it doesn't stay within the organization, but we also look at our customers, the customers' customers, our partners as in vendors. We try and understand what are their current challenges, how do we bring in some change in their life. So one is making sure that all the partners are involved. And of course, I don't want to go to the change management part of it, which is always the key, one of the key reasons, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. In fact, as I was as I was asking this question to you, I was also thinking and contemplating here. So I think in terms of this kind of a challenges, I feel personally, and if I look back into the organizations where I have worked, the change management part of digital implementation is a mammoth task, because sometimes what happens, when we implement big ticket projects like this, we think like it's a supply chain project. I think it's not a supply chain project. It's an enterprise-led project.
Sure.
Wherein you have HR, wherein you have finance, sales, marketing, and of course, even the CEO should be there as a steering committee, right? So when you have this, I think it becomes all the more easy for big ticket implementation. And
True.
that can be a kind of a recipe of success also.
No, absolutely. We cannot leave that aspect out of it, one of the key ingredients. Again, that interesting point that you brought up. How do we ensure that the people part of it is taken care of when we look at technology interventions? Some experience related to, I don't know, warehouse maybe, where you have,
Yes.
I'm sure you have done work in that area as well.
So, so whenever you talk about warehouse, the one thing which comes to my mind is that what warehousing in India was 20 years back and what it is today. There has been a total 180-degree change in terms of the warehouse capacity, capability, and the way in warehouse function. see the kind of airports or the roadways that we used to have 15 years back. So I remember there's an article in Business Today in 2011 which talked about how to make logistics sexy. So, and there was an article into that wherein it was talked very specifically that logistics is something, is in like the cost of the logistics for this country is around 13% of the GDP. And if you see like US and others, it's 8% of GDP.
Right.
And that's why the entire NLP, the National Logistics Policy, has been, drafted, wherein we are talking about how to get to the level of 8% of GDP, right? And so much of investment is happening in logistics in terms of the roadways, in terms of the how to control the wastage, and so on and so forth. So coming back to the warehouses, 20 years back, it was all godowns, actually, if you ask me, right? And today, you go and see that there are warehouses of 100,000 square feet minimum. There's nothing called 20,000 or 25,000 square feet.
Yeah.
You have 1 lakh square feet warehouses. And these warehouses are not only warehouse, these warehouses are just replica of the plant. So if you walk into a warehouse of maybe Amazon or others, I was fortunate to visit in Shanghai, one of the warehouses of Alibaba. That warehouse was just equivalent to at least 4 football fields, right? It was just like a massive factory, and you have all the automation that you can think of, right? Everything was visible there. So you had the robots, you have the AI, you have the machine learning out there, you have the IoTs, and there was so many systems. Today morning there was a session about different systems and how do you integrate seamlessly, right? So I was just wondering before that session, yes, that is a big problem in itself. So how do you really, really integrate that? So interoperability of different systems in a warehouse is also a big challenge. And today I was happy to see that this integration happens very smoothly, right? And so warehouses are smart, and warehouses are just like a plant, right? Currently, wherein you have the robots, and we really use AI and ML. Right. To really pick, sort, and finally dispatch. And just imagine a situation that when you have, suppose, 50,000 pallets in a warehouse, to just give a number, and you cannot just operate with the manual. So you have to have a balance of automation and humans together. Sure. And put the right people at the right place, or the right machines at the right place. And basis these technologies of RFID, the IoTs, AI, ML all combined together, the way you do in a plant, the same thing has to be replicated there. So this is the smartness of the warehouses. Absolutely. And honestly speaking, a lot of investment is happening to this area because, see, India is growing, right? And there'll be growth for the next 10, 20 years as well. And if India is growing at the level of 6 to 7% of GDP, so each and every company who is growing in terms of the volume, true, the surge in the volume, you need a different way of handling. You just cannot afford to handle the shipments from the warehouse with manual. True. Yeah. You have to have a sophisticated technology so that your efficiency is improved. And finally, a customer, see, just imagine as a customer 10 years back, okay, fine, we can wait for 5 days, 6 days, right? Now, the moment you place an order in Amazon or any of the kind of platform, you want it tomorrow, you want it right now, right? Yeah. So such is the kind of a change which has happened in the consumer want, need. So basis that want and need, you cannot just say that, fine, it will take such and such time because we used to do it in the last 10 years. Not anymore. Not anymore. So I think technology has to be there, and it's good. And there has to be a good balance between technology and people and human together, and drive the efficiencies in the warehouses as we do in the factories as well. So that is about the smart warehouses that we talked about, Mr. Bhushan. So in terms of what do you see in the future now, in the next 4 or 5 years, what are the different kind of technology you envisage, which is going to be there, be there in the industry to drive efficiencies and bring down the cost?
Right. No, very, very relevant. So our lives and industry in general is currently dictated by words like sustainability, circular economy, and all that. Everyone knows that, everyone has been using it, but it's heartening to see that industries have are making conscious effort, investment in making sure that not just for CSR, but the compliance, regulatory compliance and the reporting is adhered to, and thereby make sure that we build in systems to ensure that we capture or report carbon credits and everything. So sustainability is going to dictate everything that we do from henceforth. And for that, I wouldn't be surprised if we come up with scenarios like large enterprises coming up with, I would say, platforms. There are technologies available to make sure that all the ecosystem is connected so that there is complete transparency, there is reporting, governance. That's about it. So I would say that it's a connected ecosystem that we will see in future.
Yeah, I really concur to what you were saying about this. I see, the rate at which the adoption of technology is happening is happening at a very frenetic speed. And my concern is a bit more larger here. So one is about the big organizations, one is about the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. I think that is an area wherein they have to imbibe technology. And for imbibing the technology out there, I think the biggest challenge is that about the business process reengineering part, because you cannot just afford to go blindly into technology adoption because your neighbor is doing that. I think the first and foremost, really simplification of the process, doing the business process reengineering, and then have a solid digital kind of a strategy for the entire enterprise, and basis that should move forward. But some of the things which I feel is that the way we run the factories in terms of Industry 4.0, robotics, then the usage of IoTs. I was just seeing some of the factories wherein maintenance is a big issue, big problem in terms of the breakdowns and others, right? So with the usage of IoT, we have been able to see that how this maintenance through a vibration technology wherein, you have IoTs and sensors put into your critical machines, and basis that you collect the readings, and finally you apply your AI and ML techniques, and finally it gives you a kind of a predictive analytics, like what are the machines will go for a, kind of a breakdown, and what you can do, as opposed to a preventive maintenance kind of a model wherein you have a slit schedule time that, by July 30th you have to do, then October 30th, so on and so forth. I think these changes which are happening, some of the companies are really adopting it pretty fast. And there are some companies, of course, because of reasons, the technology adoption is not that speed. But I think the benefit which is going to come to the industry because of all these things are humongous. And the cost of technology imbibing has also come down in the last 5-7 years, right? Sure. What it was in 2012, 2013, and right now. Yeah. I think it's a good platform that we are in currently. And the basis that it is a very good time wherein we can bring down the cost, we can be cost competitive, and basis that we can improve our efficiencies. And digital is something you cannot just keep it aside. It is an integral part of your strategy, and basis that it moves.
Absolutely. And when we look at benefit realization, there is nothing more or nothing better when we look at digital transformation for entire organization. Absolutely. So I think that is it, yeah.
So thank you very much, Bhushan. So we can open the floor for questions.
If there isn't any, then maybe Khushi.
Audience, we have got a few more minutes at our hands. So if there is something any one of you would like to ask, please raise your hand. So we'll give them a minute, maybe if they are, thinking about something. Yes, you can give your comments about the topics that we have had for today, and especially for the last 25 minutes. Anything you would like to ask the audience?
My question to audience would be that, are you also feeling the same the way we were talking about today about the digital? Because I experienced this for the last 5-7 years in a very different way. in my enterprise as well, right? So how has been your experience as well in the last 5-7 years in terms of technology imbibing in the industry?
So Sunit and Bhushan, I think I concur with all your thoughts. Definitely very interesting perspectives. I think, like you rightly said, digital was thrust upon us by COVID, actually. So previously it was more reactive than proactive, and now I think digital has to be proactive. So in overall, I think one of the comments I had was, in addition to the 3 points that Bhushan you made, is really the thing is about being digital versus embracing digital. So, and if you have to embark on the digital transformation, then you really have to change the way we work, and that's for the entire company. And sometimes that's a big challenge because we are in our silos, and this is the best way that we work, and we are not willing to change at times. So do you agree to that?
No, absolutely, 100%. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
I'm Devendra Kupikar from Dow Chemical.
Hi. In my view, it is always a work in progress activity. There is nothing like we have done this and we are there. I'm sure you will agree. So it has to be top down, but at the same time bottom up as well. Unless and until the shop floor person is convinced about the new way of working, what value it adds to his day-to-day life, it's difficult to sustain it over a period, right? We can deploy a system, we can give him a kind of a checklist or a framework, but it stops there.
If I have to add this question, answer here. See, just remember when we used to have ERP implementation, right? So it was not an easy, right? We used to all hear about, okay, so many companies failed in the implementation of ERP, right? So why did those failure news is to come? Actually, I believe it's much more to do with the change management. See, capability is a very important component about all this success, because sometimes we tend to go into a slot like, fine, we have to do it because it is just like, it has been thrust, right? I think first and foremost, improvement in the capability of the people, though it might take some time, but it's very important because, until unless we have the right sets of the people and the right capability injection is there, I think this will not get the success that you desire. It must be implemented like kind of a thing like, you just do it and all. But if you really want to bring the benefit, I think a lot of impetus has to happen into the capability of the people, which sometimes knowingly also we don't do it in a lot of places.
Thank you. And I think I have one more question actually for you guys, which is, with the digital transformation, there's a need for upskilling, and probably a new set of skills, right? So how do you see the upskilling happening? And, are we finding the right skills in the right time, Any comments on that?
No, sure. Again, this is one of the challenges faced by everyone. So again, I'll share my experience. Number one, what we have done is when we talk about collaboration, industry and academia collaboration, that is one aspect that we have initiated, where we are collaborating with leading institutions to ensure that what is happening, what is the latest from a technology standpoint is passed on to the community that we have, in-house community, that is one. Second, we have created an innovation cell within the organization where there are a variety of programs that we execute. One is the Citizen Development Program, where we ensure that the key members of the organizations are educated. It's all about improving the digital quotient of the organization so that we are democratizing the technology aspects of it. So that is a conscious effort, and we measure it on a regular basis. I'm not saying that this is the solution, but this is what we have initiated, and we have found it to be successful.
Hi, good evening. This is Ankit Mathur here. I'm again from Dow Chemical. The question that I have for you, I think you you touched upon one of the things that is e-commerce evolved the overall transformation in supply chain, right? So my question is basically what are the changes we are seeing in the consumer behavior or maybe expectations from the manufacturing perspective?
Let me give a stab on this question, a very favorite question. See, what was the percentage or contribution of e-commerce 10 years back? It was 1.5 to 2%.
Yeah.
During COVID, it must have galloped to 12 to 15%. In China, in a steady state, it was 20%, right? So e-commerce as a channel is a very different channel, and it has evolved in the last 8-10 years. Now, to address to this channel, of course, it's not an easy job because without the right set of technology, you cannot just, get into that, okay? But I'll say that the kind of a variability in this channel, so let's take the example of demand forecast. So when you have a steady state demand forecast for the other channels of the general trade or the traditional trade, it is quite easy because, you got a baseline, then you forecast for the events and the corresponding uplifts, and then you have this A plus B plus C is equal to your final demand. But the variability of e-commerce is humongous, right, in that particular channel. And there exactly, if you can look into of applying artificial intelligence basis, forecasting methodology, that will give you that will help you to minimize the variability or take care of the variability, right? And basis that you can forecast. And I think for this channel, of course, without technology, you cannot just move ahead. And for that matter, the entire demand planning per se has also gone for a sea change, right? Today is e-commerce, and then there's an omni-channel as well, right? So the channels are also evolving with the more and more channels, more and more complexity, more and more variability. So can you do it in a manual way, or can you do in a legacy systems? You have to have artificial intelligence or machine learning into this to really, reap the maximum benefit arising out of this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So I'm going to ask a question out of the context. This is Swaminathan again from Dow Chemicals. The context is something different. Like India is agriculture country, right? 50% of the revenue comes from agriculture, and the other revenues come from the industries and manufacturing, other kind of things. So how are we going to put on IoT on the agriculture side also? Are we really working on that front? Because several companies are into agro products or something like that. Most of the manufacturing does. How we are going to attack that front? Is there anything that you can look for future?
Shall we start first? Yeah, very good question. And if you see a data point, in terms of the startups who are investing, at least I see from the data point, there are two sectors. One is logistics, wherein a lot of investment is happening because of the roadways, infrastructure, track and trace, so on and so forth, warehousing. And the second part is the agriculture, right? So I think a lot of investment is happening to that sector as well. And in agriculture, from the supply chain point of view, I look into farm to fork. So in this country, the kind of wastages which happen, when I talked about the total logistics cost is around 13 to 14%, in this, the entire this wastages is also incorporated, right? And why these wastages happen? Because we don't have the quality warehouses in the hinterlands of the country. So when you source apples or any kind of a perishable goods from a place X to Y, we did not have the kind of an infrastructure which is required. I'm talking about some 5-10 years back. But now a lot of investment is happening to those areas, right? Wherein you have cold chain warehouses, you have got a hub and spoke models, right? You have technology to take care of that. You have track and trace, and basis that you have some strategy to reduce the wastages of that. So that is one element of supply chain and technology, how that can be addressed for the agriculture part. In other parts of the agriculture, if you ask me in terms of the crops and the farms and others, there's a lot of technology which is getting put in place so that the yields become more and more, right? And a lot of investment is happening to that area as well. Yeah?
Thank you so much for this wonderful session.